Oh God, why me? Why is this happening to me?
My name is Chioma. At 38 years old, I paid for my own bride price because I was desperate to get married. I thought I was buying a happy future. I had no idea I was paying for my own heartbreak. Have you ever seen a woman pay for her own bride price just because she was afraid of growing old alone? This is the heartbreaking story of Chioma, a successful businesswoman from Udi in Enugu State, and Joseph, a handsome young man from Umuogwa in Abia State. Sometimes, the greatest mistake we make is not loving someone too much. Sometimes, it is settling for less because we are afraid of what people will say. Chioma was 38 years old. She was kind, she was respectful, she was hardworking. She owned a thriving clothing business in Lagos. Every morning before sunrise, she was already preparing for work. She supplied clothes to many shops across Lagos. People respected her because she worked honestly. She built everything with her own hands. She had her own apartment. She drove a neat car. She paid her own bills. She lacked nothing except one thing: a husband. Whenever she traveled home to Udi during Christmas, the same questions waited for her. Chioma, when are you bringing a husband? Are you planning to remain single forever? Your younger cousins are already married. What are you waiting for? Some relatives laughed behind her back. Some laughed in front of her. Others whispered whenever she walked past them. Maybe no man wants her. She is getting too old. A woman cannot buy time. Those words hurt Chioma more than anyone knew. Every year the pressure became heavier. Every wedding she attended reminded her that she was still alone. Every family gathering became another place of embarrassment. She smiled outside, but inside she cried. One evening after returning to Lagos from Enugu, she sat quietly on her balcony. She looked at the sky. She whispered to herself, "God, am I asking for too much?" Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Then one Saturday afternoon, something unexpected happened. Chioma went to a supermarket to buy groceries. As she carried several heavy bags toward her car, one bag suddenly tore open. Tomatoes rolled across the parking lot. Onions scattered everywhere. People looked. Some laughed. Before Chioma could bend down, a young man rushed over. "Don't worry. Let me help you." The young man quickly gathered everything. He smiled warmly. "My name is Joseph." Chioma smiled back. "I'm Chioma." Joseph helped her load everything into her car. Before leaving, he politely asked if they could stay in touch. Chioma hesitated. She had met many men before. Some only wanted her money. Others disappeared after a few weeks. But Joseph seemed different. He looked humble. He spoke gently. He respected her. She agreed. Over the next few months, they spoke almost every day. Joseph always checked on her. He prayed with her. He made her laugh. He listened whenever she talked about work. For the first time in many years, Chioma felt peace. Joseph told her he had moved to Lagos, searching for better opportunities. He said life had been difficult. He believed God would soon change his story. Chioma admired his hope. She believed every hard-working person deserved a chance. As their friendship grew, Joseph asked Chioma one important question: "Will you marry me?" Chioma became silent. Her heart was racing. She remembered every insult, every wedding invitation, every family gathering, every lonely night. She finally smiled. Yes. The wedding preparations began almost immediately. Joseph admitted he had very little money. Chioma didn't complain. She quietly paid for almost everything. She paid for the traditional marriage preparations. She paid for the food. She paid for the decorations. She paid for the transport. She paid for the musicians. She even gave Joseph money so he could present her bride price with dignity before her family. Nobody knew. Everyone believed Joseph had paid. Only Chioma and Joseph knew the truth. On the day of the traditional marriage, Chioma looked beautiful in her elegant Igbo attire. Joseph stood proudly beside her. Their families danced. Friends celebrated. Music filled the air. People congratulated them. Some said they were made for each other. Others said love had finally found Chioma. After the celebration, the newly married couple returned to Lagos. Chioma believed the hardest part of her life was over. She smiled throughout the journey. She held Joseph's hand. She whispered softly, "Our real life starts today." But she had no idea. Her greatest heartbreak had only just begun. When Chioma and Joseph returned to Lagos, she believed they were about to build a beautiful future together. The first few weeks of their marriage were peaceful. They laughed together. They cooked together. They prayed together every evening. Chioma woke up before sunrise every day to prepare for work, while Joseph stayed at home. At first, she believed he only needed a little time to settle down and find a good job. Whenever she left for work, she would smile and say, "Don't worry, your own breakthrough is coming." Joseph would smile back and promise her that he was applying for jobs. Weeks turned into months. Months slowly became a year. Nothing changed. Every morning Chioma went out to work, while Joseph remained at home. Whenever she returned in the evening, she met him watching television, sleeping on the couch, or chatting on his phone. She never complained at first, because she loved him. She believed every marriage had difficult seasons. Chioma continued paying the house rent. She paid the electricity bills. She paid the water bills. She bought food for the house. She bought Joseph new clothes whenever he needed them. She filled the car with fuel. She even gave Joseph money for his personal expenses. Joseph accepted everything without shame. Instead of looking for work or learning a trade, he spent most of his days moving around the neighborhood with friends. Whenever Chioma encouraged him to start a small business, Joseph always had another excuse. "The economy is hard. Nobody is hiring. I don't want to rush into the wrong business." Chioma believed him every single time. She continued carrying the family on her shoulders. Then another miracle happened. One morning, Chioma discovered she was pregnant. Tears of joy filled her eyes. She immediately called Joseph with the good news. Joseph was excited too. They thanked God together. They began buying baby clothes. They talked about baby names. They imagined the future they would build as parents. But just when happiness entered their home, tragedy followed. A few weeks later, Chioma suddenly fell seriously ill. She was rushed to the hospital. The doctors did everything they could, but she lost the pregnancy. Chioma cried for days. Joseph tried to comfort her. He told her everything would be all right. Months later, Chioma became pregnant again. This time they were more careful. She followed every medical instruction. She attended every hospital appointment. She rested whenever she could. She prayed every day. Once again, hope filled their home. Once again, they dreamed about holding their baby. But fate dealt another painful blow. She lost the pregnancy again. Her heart shattered into pieces. She blamed herself even though the doctors told her it was not her fault. Joseph became quieter than before. Instead of encouraging his wife, he started spending more time away from home. Then the phone calls from his family in Enugu State became more frequent. His mother would ask, "Has your wife given birth yet?" His aunt would say, "Joseph, you are still young. Why did you marry an older woman?" Another relative said, "Women her age usually have problems giving birth. Think carefully before you waste your life." Every visit home became another opportunity for people to fill Joseph's ears with poisonous words. They told him he deserved a younger wife. They told him he needed children to carry on the family name. They ignored the doctors who said miscarriages could happen for many different reasons. Instead, they blamed Chioma for everything. Joseph slowly began to believe them. The loving husband Chioma married started changing. He became distant. He stopped praying with her. He stopped asking about her day. He hardly smiled anymore. Some nights he would come home very late without any explanation. Other nights he would barely speak during dinner. Chioma noticed the change immediately. One evening, she gently held his hand and asked, "Joseph, have I offended you?" Joseph pulled his hand away and answered coldly, "I'm just tired." Chioma looked into his eyes. She knew something was wrong, but she chose to remain patient. She believed love could fix every broken heart. She had no idea that someone else was already whispering into her husband's ears and slowly pulling him away from the marriage. The days became colder inside their marriage, even though they still lived under the same roof. Chioma tried everything she could to save her home. She cooked Joseph's favorite meals. She bought him new clothes. She encouraged him to start a business with some money she had saved for him. Joseph collected the money, but never started any business. Whenever Chioma asked him about it, he would simply say, "I'm still making plans." Deep inside, Joseph had already begun listening more to his relatives than to his own wife. Every phone call from home made his heart harder. One afternoon, his elder cousin called him from Enugu State and said, "Joseph, if you continue staying with Chioma, you may never have children. Think about your future before it is too late." Those words refused to leave his mind. A few weeks later, Joseph made a shocking announcement. He told Chioma that he wanted to travel to Delta State because a friend had promised to help him find work. Chioma was happy to hear that at last her husband wanted to become responsible. She smiled and hugged him. She even gave him money for his transport, rented him a small room in Delta State, and gave him extra money to help him settle down before finding work. She believed her sacrifice would finally bring peace to their marriage. Joseph arrived in Delta State, but instead of searching seriously for work, he spent most of his time moving from one place to another. One evening, while visiting a local restaurant, he met a woman named Amara. Amara was friendly and welcoming. She was a divorcee, raising 3 young children alone. She worked hard to provide for them, and she admired the way Joseph spoke kindly to her children. Joseph began visiting more often. Before long, he practically moved into Amara's house. He never told her the full truth about his marriage. He only said he had separated from his wife and that the relationship was over. Back in Lagos, Chioma waited patiently for her husband to return. She called him almost every day. At first, he answered her calls. Then he became too busy to talk. Soon he stopped answering altogether. His messages became shorter. Sometimes he ignored her for days. Chioma became worried. She thought something terrible had happened. One weekend she traveled all the way to Delta State to surprise her husband. She stood outside the address he had given her. Before she could knock on the door, she saw Joseph walking out of the house holding the hand of a little boy. Behind him came Amara carrying a little girl, while another child happily called Joseph, "Daddy." Chioma stood frozen. Her shopping bag slipped from her hands. Tears filled her eyes. Joseph looked up and saw his wife standing across the road. Their eyes met. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. Then Joseph slowly walked toward her. Chioma looked at him with trembling lips and quietly asked, "Joseph, who are these people?" Joseph lowered his head before answering, "This is where I live now." Chioma felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. "So after everything, after all the sacrifices, this is how you repay me," she whispered. Joseph remained silent. Chioma begged him with tears rolling down her cheeks. "Please come home. We can still fix our marriage. We can pray together again. We can start over. I still love you." Joseph shook his head slowly. "I'm not coming back, Chioma. My decision is final." Those words broke her heart completely. She cried until she had no more tears left. She returned to Lagos alone, carrying nothing but the pain of a broken marriage. As the bus drove away from Delta State, Chioma looked out of the window and whispered to herself, "I gave this man everything I had. I pray one day he understands the value of what he threw away." Years passed. Life moved on for both of them, but in very different ways. Chioma never remarried. At first, Many people pitied her. Some even expected her to break down completely after Joseph left. But Chioma refused to let heartbreak destroy her. She poured all her energy into her business. She opened another clothing store in Lagos. She employed young men and women who were looking for work. She became known as a kind employer who treated everyone with respect. Although she still wished she had children, she found joy in helping others. The pain in her heart slowly faded. She no longer cried herself to sleep. She learned to smile again. She learned to laugh again. She learned that peace is sometimes better than forcing yourself to stay in a painful relationship. Joseph's life, however, turned out very differently from what he had imagined. Living with Amara was not as easy as he expected. Raising 3 children who were not his own came with many responsibilities. School fees had to be paid. Food became more expensive every month. Rent increased. Medical bills kept coming. The little money Joseph managed to earn from occasional jobs was never enough. The happy life he had dreamed about never came. As the years passed, arguments became common in the house. Amara became frustrated because Joseph still struggled to provide consistently. Joseph also realized that despite all the years that had gone by, he still had no biological child of his own. Sometimes he would sit alone outside the house late at night and think about Chioma. He remembered how she had loved him without conditions. He remembered how she paid the rent every year without complaining. He remembered how she believed in him when nobody else did. He remembered the money she gave him to start a better life. He remembered that she even gave him the money he used to pay her own bride price. Every memory felt like a heavy stone resting on his heart. One day, an old friend from Lagos visited Delta State. During their conversation, the friend mentioned Chioma. "Have you heard about your former wife?" the friend asked. Joseph slowly shook his head. The friend smiled and said, "She is doing very well now. Her business has grown bigger than ever. She looks healthy, she looks happy. She spends her time helping people. Honestly, anyone who sees her can tell she has found peace." Joseph forced a smile, but inside his heart was breaking. That night he could not sleep. For the first time, he truly understood what he had lost. He thought about calling Chioma. He picked up his phone several times, but he could not press the call button. Shame held his hand back. He remembered the day she stood before him in Delta State, with tears in her eyes, begging him to return home. He remembered how he looked into her eyes and said, "My decision is final." Those words now echoed in his mind every single day. He knew that if he appeared before Chioma now, it would not be because he loved her more than before. It would be because life had become difficult. He could not bring himself to do that. Some doors, once closed, never opened the same way again. Joseph accepted that he had made the biggest mistake of his life. Chioma never spoke badly about him. She never wished him evil. She simply chose peace over bitterness and continued living her life with dignity. Joseph remained where he was, carrying the weight of his own decisions. Sometimes the greatest punishment in life is not what other people do to us. It is living every day with the consequences of the choices we made ourselves. The moral of this story is simple. Never abandon someone who stood beside you when you had nothing. Never allow the voices of other people to destroy a home built on love and sacrifice. Do not mistake loyalty for weakness, because a faithful heart is one of the rarest gifts you will ever receive. And remember this, when life gives you someone who truly believes in you, value that person before it becomes a memory you can never get back. If this story touched your heart, let us know in the comments what lesson you learned from Chioma and Joseph's story. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring African stories.